Hello and welcome to this week's Beyond the Hub, where we talk about everything from sales to marketing to your business as a whole. And today we're going to be focusing on HubSpot's 2025 marketing report, which I look forward to every year. And if you didn't know, they've also got one on blogging and the state of sales report as well. So they're really, really great. But what we tend to hear from people is that they want to know, okay, what does this mean exactly for me? What's an unbiased opinion? So that's why I've looped in Hollie, who is our head of marketing, and she's going to help us decode the report slightly. And we're going to be, I think, it's going to be an interesting discussion because we're two different types of marketers. So, Hollie, I think we need to be really clear on that before we start.
Yes. So I've been in marketing for about 15 years now. And I think it's fair to say that the way we differ mostly is that I tend to be much more on the cynical side. I think I've seen a lot of trends come and go. So I'm really skeptical
Mhm.
usually when things come up. So I don't. So I think I can give quite a good view on like realistically, is this going to impact your business, or like how can you actually put it into play, or is it just something that is just like fleeting and it'll change in the next year?
And I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I love a shiny new object, I love a shiny new toy, so it's going to be quite balanced, hopefully. Um, And I think before we even dive into HubSpot's predictions and what they've said in the report, I think we should touch on some of the trends that have been emerging, and talk about the biggest shifts that we've seen in the industry. So, Hollie, what have you kind of noticed?
um, I don't think you can't have this conversation without starting with AI, of course. I think what people have been speaking about in terms of shifts is this shift towards like it makes you more AI makes you more productive, but then you focus on really value driven like content personality. I don't think we've seen that part as much yet. I think we've really seen the productivity, but I think it's still too early to say that we've seen the um, real focus on creating genuine, authentic content. I don't feel like we've seen that yet. So I think, yes, obviously the big shift is AI, but I think that's only in the really productivity space. I think over the last year or so, maybe longer, we've seen marketers really paying attention, more attention than ever to data. And I think that probably links into the AI stuff because AI is only as good as the data it has to work from on your business. So I think that that's a huge shift as well. But then equally, privacy is a concern. So there's a lot of talk about balancing that. So yeah, I think that's a huge, I think that's a big change. Um, Again, I think as a result of AI, we've known for a long time that like the marketing landscape is changing. I think the big change this year has been that we've certainly experienced the challenges of SEO, and getting people to actually come to your website, instead of just having like an AI summary at the top of Google. I think that's been such a huge challenge, and a massive change in the way that people consume content, like those AI summaries in ChatGPT, Google, like everywhere. Basically, they're in email now.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that has definitely been a challenge. I think another big shift, which I'm always really interested about, is like we're so used to people like in the B2C world in our own lives, influencers. And I think we're seeing far more B2B now, ones cropping
Mhm.
up.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, that's been a big change in the last year. Video, obviously, not this isn't just in the last year, but I think it's really taken off video content, short form video content, and video content that's driven often by AI. And we're seeing a lot of like, videos that are entirely created with AI, not always the best.
No.
But I think that that is just like sending video into like another sphere in
Mhm.
terms of like popularity. So yeah, I think those are the main sort of changes in the landscape.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's interesting what you said about the B2B influencers because I'm interested to see how they're going to bring the regulations that you've got with B2C over to B2B because that's not there at the moment. You don't have
No, not at all.
people putting hashtag ad and things like that. So it's really difficult to identify who's being authentic, who's doing like actually their own recommendations, and who's getting paid to do that at the moment. So I'm
Yeah, there's really nothing around it, is there? Like there's platforms where you can look at who is the right influencer that will match you, or you just find it naturally, organically through platforms like LinkedIn, but there's really nothing, no rules written, so to speak, on how that all plays out.
Yeah, but AI obviously is the biggest one, and HubSpot has obviously talked about that in their report. So some of the ways they see AI shaping the future is turning text into multimodal campaigns. So what has your experience been with this so far?
Um, so I think just clarifying, and you can read it in the HubSpot report, what they mean by multimodal. So using one bit of content to create, say, use a blog post to create a social post, or a video, following on blog posts, CTAs, everything like that. I think that it massively transforms the productivity of a marketing team, and especially I guess it's having the biggest impact then on the smaller teams, the ones that don't have lots of specialists in, or don't have the bandwidth to be able to create these campaigns coming out faster, than they have before. Content obviously is as well. Um, my experience is, and I think a lot of people will share this view, is it still needs really strict checks. It's like you can never just press the button, the content is created, and you just post it.
Hmm.
Please don't do that. Never do that, because you can't trust it.
It's so
I
obvious.
Yeah, I know it is. And I think that's going to be, in the next sort of 18 months, an area that we see probably quite a big improvement in. But I don't think that it's really going to, um, I don't think we'll ever get rid of that human touch. But I think what I'd really recommend thinking about with these like multimodal campaigns, especially, is thinking, is really clarifying up front which content it's okay to be AI driven, and which content really needs a personal touch, because there is a massive difference.
Mhm.
And I don't think it should ever be all or nothing. So absolutely, there's multimodal tools like you find in Content Hub, they're brilliant. But yeah, never use them completely, and
Mhm.
be really clear about when you should and shouldn't, I think.
No, I think that's helpful. And it kind of leads nicely into using AI for reporting and AI reporting tools to calculate and evaluate the ROI of campaigns. I think that leads quite nicely onto that. But I personally experimented with this a little bit, and I think it's really interesting because traditionally the focus when you're analyzing data and things is on engagement rates, it's on conversion numbers and things. And these AI powered tools are really great at looking at the patterns and the correlations that we might overlook. But I'd say it's similar to you looking at something and then me looking at something. We're each potentially going to highlight different aspects of the same data set, but it's just a different expert opinion. So if you're
Yeah,
a good marketer, you're already going to be drawing the conclusion that AI is drawing for you. It just might be a little bit quicker. So that might be the bit that we get
yeah.
the productivity from. But a cool tool actually, I'm not sure if you use it, Holly, is the AI reporting is HubSpot's social agent. So it combines data streams. So it combines your historical performance, it combines your company specific context, which is really important, I think, is that context piece, and then industry benchmarks as well to create recommendations. So I think that's where the power of the AI reporting comes in, not necessarily to prove your campaigns, but to give you more of a
Bring in everything
multi-dimensional,
else.
yes, multi-dimensional for sure. And it kind of,
Especially because that's the stuff that takes a long time to gather all of that information, especially like, yeah, the external sources, industry stuff,
mhm,
to have that industry data that stays up to date is so time consuming that
mhm.
actually often it's very overlooked, and we just have a very narrow lens of looking at our own stuff. So I think you're really right about that.
Yeah, and it's that is the most groundbreaking piece for me as a marketer because, like you said, it's going to continuously update so that you
Mm.
can get everything so that you don't have to, which I think is pretty cool. But that kind of leads on to strategy, because obviously that's going to inform strategy and things. And it's quite a controversial trend is automating your marketing strategy and execution with AI. So a lot of people worry AI is going to replace their jobs, and that's been a concern that we've seen all over LinkedIn and things. So how do you see AI and human marketers working together?
I think you kind of touched on it a little bit there about the skill that it comes down to the skills that marketers need that are separated from what AI can do. And I think that if you looked at like the traditional skills of the marketing list, these aren't like what I'm going to say isn't the sort of things that you'd find on a job description, but it's some skills that are really important that will really differentiate the human marketer from what AI can do. So the first one I think is that like almost journalistic mind. It's probing, asking the right questions from data, from your business, from your colleagues, from your customers, like for case studies. I don't think that AI, well, certainly now, and I can't really see AI being able to like replicate that skill.
Mhm.
And I think it's something that really, like when we're looking at like again, like job descriptions, we really need to start putting in as a skill, because I think that that one particularly is really important. I think also the other one is really being able, again, linking back to what you were saying about the data, utilizing context. AI can do that to an extent. Like you said, it can look at the business, you can put in your goals, it can look at data to see, what's worked really well before with your marketing strategies, but it doesn't know uh, it can't get into like the nuanced context. It can't understand the history, the
Mhm.
aspirations, the stories, the voice. So it says it can understand the voice, and actually, some in content it sometimes can. But when you're putting together a strategy, that like you can't build a strategy without that sort of context.
Mhm.
Um, and so basically, AI is obviously not going anywhere, but marketers absolutely have to find a way to work alongside it. And I think it's that working on those journalistic skills, those contextual skills, and analytical skills to a certain extent as well, that will mean that marketers will always have a job.
Mm.
And the humans really can, yeah, work alongside AI and add value to it.
I think that's really important what you said about the what AI can't pick up on. And at the moment, it's mainly using like structured data.
Yeah,
There is going to be a shift, I think, where AI starts using unstructured data when you start putting all that in, conversations with your clients, call recordings, and things like that. But even with all of that, they still don't know. It still doesn't know you as a business. It can't get to the heart of you as a business. And only I feel you're right entirely that there's always going to be a need for humans there, even when unstructured data comes into AI.
yeah, exactly.
So we talked a lot about AI now, but HubSpot also talks a lot still about the human element in the report, which is really good to see. And they talk a lot about creating content that reflects brand values. And how important do you think that's going to be in 2025?
I think it is as important as ever. Let's
Mhm.
not talk about try not to talk about AI anymore, but I think there's more content. Um, and as marketers, we spend so much time thinking about our differentiators. How is our product or service different? What features are different? Actually, maybe controversial, but I'd say most businesses and what they offer aren't very different in terms
Mhm.
of their actual what they deliver, the features that they have. It's the people, the voice, the emotion that you invoke from your audience that it makes it different. And I think going back to the AI stuff again, that only becomes more important when you've got more content, more ways for people to um, consume content from your brand and lots of different brands and compare. I think that, yeah, I was at a talk a few months ago from Grant LeBoff, who's, the big guy in branding, and also, and I think he's great because he talks a lot about the the psychology behind it.
Mhm.
Even little things like he was talking about how he put music on a company was experiencing quite a low conversion rate on their website. Um, and quite they had a really short like time viewed. He added some music to the website and that matched the company's brand, voice, values, and really just was designed to invoke a certain emotion, like happy, relief.
Mhm.
And it transformed their conversion rate. I can't remember the exact statistics, but I think that sort of thing goes to show you that um, having content or elements to your brand and your marketing strategy that link to your values and show some real emotion just becomes more and more important.
That's really good. And I think people forget sometimes that the your brand and your voice and things like that, it's not from when they start talking to you. That experience is when they first encounter you entirely. So that experience where they're on your website and then they talk to you and post sales, all of that needs to reflect the same feeling, the
Yeah,
same emotions, which I think is can be really difficult and is again something that not AI can comprehend. They can't really comprehend emotions and things like that at the moment. So
no,
that's a really key part where humans are going to make a difference.
yeah. We just can't get away from AI, can
No, I
we?
know.
That's just it's part of it now, isn't it? It's ingrained.
Exactly. And authenticity, it links massively to authenticity where AI struggles with authenticity and brands really need to showcase that. And HubSpot pick up on this in the report when it comes to video content. And you mentioned this earlier as a really big shift that we've seen this year. We're going to keep seeing. But what are some practical steps that people can do to maybe incorporate more video? Because I think that's where people struggle.
Um, I think authenticity, obviously, as you said, reference a lot into in the report. And I think maybe the question isn't about or or the sort of thought isn't about how to incorporate more video. I think people can do that really easily now. Like it just comes naturally. But it's about create. How do you create authentic
Yeah.
video? Is the more important question, I think. And I looked up the definition the other day of authenticity because like when you get to the bones of it, what does it actually mean? And actually, there are so many different descriptions of it. But the one I think that it was simplest was the act of aligning your actions with the core values of or beliefs, and that could be on a personal or business level. I think there's no short-term solution to building authenticity, but to ensure that when you're coming up with ideas for video content, you've always got the values at the back of your mind. And I
Hmm.
don't think you need to work hard to reference those like directly in your video content. I think it's things like if I give an example, you do your What's New Wednesday, where you show all the HubSpot product updates. And one of our values, our business values, is transparency. And I think how you do that really well, and you show that, and you've shown that over a really long period of time, is that say you've got a product update, you're very honest if the use case isn't actually that strong. Like HubSpot have brought it out, but actually, is it going to make a huge impact on your business? Maybe not. You're really honest about that. And I think really transparent. You know, we're a HubSpot partner. We're obviously going to sing the praises of all these HubSpot updates and get really excited about them. But some of them we can't really see a good use case for. And I think that's an example of where you can show authenticity over which builds up over time without having to be too like explicit about your values. um in terms of your original questions about sort of practical tips of incorporating more video and building that up, so I think I'll turn that back to you actually, because you create most of our video content.
Yeah, yeah, and actually it links back to our multimodal question that we had earlier, where what we kind of tend to do is we create a lot of video content, so we're really clear on what we want to be achieving with each video stream.
Mm,
So then we keep hopefully we keep that authenticity throughout that stream. We're providing value, hopefully, and we're providing it quickly without trying to sell at the same time. Like obviously it's a marketing tool and things like that, but we're giving away value without trying to sell straight away.
Yeah.
I think that's a really key tip. But the most multimodal things. So video is one of the last really original forms of content I think you can produce quite easily, and that's a really great way of putting it into the multimodal, like the remix tool in HubSpot, for example, putting video into that because you've created this original content. So what AI produces off the back of that is going to, and we're going back to AI again, what it produces off the back is always way better than what you would have produced just putting a brief in for a blog because you've done all the original thinking. And that's what I think is really key is having those original thoughts, providing that content, the value really quickly and trying not to sell too much and also not to be too polished. I think that's what people really enjoy on LinkedIn and things is, portrait videos of people just talking into a camera because it feels really authentic. It feels like you're talking to somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
Which kind of leads us to the rise of content creators in B2B world and personality-led content, because I think that's what ties back into the authenticity. So creators and all that authentic engagement comes from personality-led content. So where
Mm.
you stand on this trend, can I call it a trend? And how should businesses look at this?
Um, I don't know if it's a trend, but more it has to be a natural consequence of AI,
Mhm.
um, and the growth of that. I think because content now is so saturated, you need to be able to show personality. Otherwise, well, like otherwise it's just, a load of text that anyone can generate.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's a trend necessarily. I think it's more of a necessity now. Think about like we had a great writer who worked with us for a long time at Abelcrest, Dr. Tom. Um, and I always, when I'm writing stuff or thinking about, working with you to think about what content we need, I always think about how passionate he was about the place that AI has, but how it can't replicate personality. And I think us, for example, um, we, we're a HubSpot consultancy. We sell people's expertise. Um,
Mhm.
we just can't do that without having a big focus on personality, personal expertise, collaboration, um, because again, that's something that can't be replicated by AI. I think in terms of, I don't think businesses have to work really hard to incorporate this into their strategy. It's more of a mindset of, and we're doing a lot of work at the moment about enabling people to understand their sort of not just personality, but personal brand and how to encourage and build that as its own channel. I think there's been a natural shift over, since smartphones were invented that people are so used to using social media, so used to collaborating, so used to showing their personality in the way that they comment or the videos that they post or the things that they put on there. I think it almost happens naturally in business now. Um, you've got people that are so used to doing that, yeah, in their personal lives that it is just second nature. It's almost like a natural shift. So I don't think businesses have to work hard to make it happen, but you do have to be clever about the are you putting any parameters around that? How are you encouraging people to do that? And what does it mean for your almost like the control of your brand? And how do you make sure people stay authentic to your brand if they are, using their own personality to create
Mhm.
content that ultimately represents you? Um, I do think you really need a clear distinction in your content strategy, which I sort of said before about which content is AI acceptable, which content needs personality. For example, you might create a blog that is in your content strategy, you want to create a blog that is SEO driven because you want to rank for a certain keyword. That's very different from So for us, our consultants sharing their point of view on a new HubSpot feature, or their view on digital transformation and education. AI
Mhm.
can't tell them what their view on that is, and I think that con that that content, that's the stuff that needs to be personality driven and authentic.
And that's where your team are going to need the most support because it actually requires a lot more thinking. So they're going to need a lot more time to come around to that and a lot more confidence because it you need a lot of confidence to say what your point of view is on a subject because it might be a little bit controversial on LinkedIn and having that
Yeah.
enablement from the business is going to be so important to make sure that that's successful.
Yeah, things like we've spoken about, training sessions that
Mhm.
that give people, specifically an idea of like, what is your voice on social media and how do you use it? I think, it's interesting, we spend so much time as marketers coming up with our brand, company social posts. Actually, there's almost a bit of a shift now, isn't there? Like we're now spending a lot of time of social media time in enabling our people
Mhm.
um to have their own social personality brand on the professional networks.
Yeah, and it's going to be really key to track that as well. So making sure that everyone's using
Yes.
tracking URLs that are personal to them, so you can see who's doing really well, who's not. And I mean, even turning it into a bit of a competition internally, I think is
Yes.
always going to
Work
help.
well for us.
It does. And it comes down to understanding your target audience, and that's something that HubSpot really touch on in the report as well, because you can't obviously create this content, personality led or not, without knowing who you're targeting and things. So it's becoming a challenge for a lot of businesses, especially because of data privacy and things like that. So personalization is talked about a lot in the HubSpot report
Mm,
um, because it helps increase sales by, I think they said 96%, which is huge. But obviously there's the challenge with the target audience and the data privacy and things. So how do you see that impacting marketing strategies moving forward? And what can people do to overcome that?
I think in a way we've felt the impact of that since, things like GDPR came
Mhm.
into play for us, and that impact has only grown. Um, and you can see that right from a personal view. Like you don't give your data away for nothing, and you feel really uncomfortable. Like I never pick up the phone to numbers that I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, HubSpot, rightly so, points out the importance of first party data. So I think that to first party data being stuff like, the data actively submitted on form, the data that comes to you first, if you like, first party. Uh, I think that that's really important for driving personalization. And I think as long as you've got all your policies and consent options and everything like that all nice and um, all sorted out, then
Mhm.
great. Um, I think it's probably about 75% of the businesses that we speak to, that I've spoken to, use some kind of enrichment. Is really commonplace.
Mhm.
And those companies that you work with, the Cognizants, the Lucias, the all of that sort of stuff, HubSpot themselves now obviously have their
Yep.
own enrichment tool. They've got a lot of blurb around, how it meets privacy standards. But I think perhaps the more important way for marketers to think about it is the data, however you get it, first party through an enrichment platform, is it enables personalization, but it does not, coming back to your question, make it effective.
Mm.
And that's where the human skill of the marketer, again, we've spoken about that a lot, comes into play. To be effective and not like creepy personalization, like, oh, I know you've been to our website. Um, the personalization itself needs to add value. It's not always just like sticking someone's name in, and like I said, like saying like, oh, I know that you've looked at our website, and do you like this? um it's using the data to and applying some thought and say, okay, how can I turn this into something that genuinely matters and adds value, so your audience doesn't find it creepy and they like the personalization. For example, we could get data on how big a company's sales team is.
Hmm.
Um, and rather than saying, oh, hello, prospect, I know that you've got 25 people in sales. I think you could really benefit from HubSpot. Like, that's creepy.
Hmm.
Because you think, oh, how do I know that? But turning it around and using some thought to think, oh, what will help them visualize using the product?
Hmm.
How can I personalize it for them? I think, well, we know that your sales team is this big. This means HubSpot will cost you this much, and the ROI that we think that you could receive from Sales Hub would be this. That then adds some value and makes them think. And I think that that's the important part to be effective. Obviously, you need the data. Data is in abundance. You can get it from everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, if it's clean and it's legal, then great. But that in itself doesn't mean it's effective, means your personalization is going to be effective. Again, you need that human element to really think about the value that you're giving.
I think that's really powerful, and um, again, something that AI can't really replicate as well. That out of the box thinking. And something I'm just going to move forward because I know we're running short on time, but move forward on something we haven't spoken about is like audio content. And now HubSpot claims that visual and audio, so podcasts and the likes of that, is really overtaking everything content, text heavy content. So again, I'm going to ask, is this a trend? Is it fleeting? Or does it kind of come back to that shift in how people are consuming things?
Um, I think the first thing to almost talk about, because it leads into that question of whether it's a sort of short-term trend or not, is it's so accessible now for businesses of any size with any skill level to create this like video and audio content, like podcasts. I can stick, a blog into HubSpot and it will make a podcast episode for me. Um, so it's not fleeting because it becomes more accessible and more important, and we think about um, changing customer expectations. We're like, I don't see us going back to just expecting more written content. So no, I don't think it's fleeting. We want quick stuff, visual stuff. We're on the go. We're time poor. That won't change. Certainly not for a while anyway. Even though sometimes we we sort of wish it would. Um, but I think that looking forward, like when I was when I've been thinking about this, like where is that going to go? What's the next step of that? Um, we know it's here to stay, but what should we be thinking about as marketers? I think is then how do you differentiate that video and audio content? And I'm thinking about then we've spoken about personalization, but I think making stuff interactive as well. Not talking about like interactive as in like, oh, send your questions into a podcast, but using technology to add an interactive element to what they're viewing or what they're listening to. And I think that if I was going to think about what's coming next, I think that's where I put my money.
That's really interesting. And I think some people do that really well at the moment. But a lot of majority of people aren't. But two more questions because I know we're running out of time slightly, and I want
Sorry,
to touch on a
I
couple
thought
more
we
things.
might.
There's so much to talk about in this report, and one of the things is brand awareness. So HubSpot claim 92% of marketers are going to look to either maintain or increase investments in brand awareness. And some people argue against that. Some people hate the term brand awareness. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily understand how people can argue against it. It of course has to be pivotal because as we've spoken about, creating content is easier. There's so much of it. The only thing that's truly going to differentiate you is your brand, and as we touched on near the beginning, the emotions, the values, the authenticity, and you have to invest in that. We know that customers in B2C, but also very much now in B2B, make really quick decisions. We were speaking yesterday about your system one and system two thinking. It's something like 97% of decisions are system one, which is the quick, the instinctual, the gut feel that you have. To be in with the chance your brand has to stand out and you have to invest in that area. I think what will be interesting to see is how much of that investment into your brand is invested into personal brands of like the
Mhm.
people in your business. That's something that will be interesting. I hope is something that comes up in the next report. I'd love to see the stats on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people struggle with brand awareness a lot because of attribution, and
Yes.
marketers we are always sucked down into to trying to prove ROI and things. So I can see why people struggle with that, but
And
in
like
2025 you have to.
maybe that's a thing as well for marketers, for us and like us included, that should we be thinking more about changing like the organizational mindset? I think we're really lucky that our MD has been a marketer, really knows the value of marketing, so we don't have to work too hard to justify, okay, well, this campaign, it might not have created loads of leads and loads of revenue, but it was really important for our brand. She gets that.
Hmm.
But I think not like certainly very few businesses that I've worked with and in understand that. The attribution, just see marketing as a cost center. I think that there has to be a shift that goes alongside this increased investment in brand. And I think marketers could do well with thinking about, how they begin to communicate that and how they get their sort of senior stakeholders to understand that part.
Yeah, which is going to be a struggle, but and it kind of this ties in a little bit to the my final question, which was going to be looking ahead. What are you most excited about? What would your advice be? And you've kind of answered the advice bit there and throughout, but what are you most excited about for the rest of the year?
I'm really excited about as I mentioned, I started marketing, about 15 years ago, and I don't think then we thought about collaboration with other brands as much as certainly in the B2B world. I don't think
Hmm.
we thought about collaboration and like micro collaboration, not just between two brands, but like you are really good at this. You collaborate, you think about, okay, you're not always thinking about, oh, is this company too competitive? Are they going to talk the same as us? You're really open to thinking about what partnership and what collaboration is going to add value to our audience, and
Hmm.
to the topic that we're talking about. And I think that that's a really exciting thing, that will just continue to grow next year and beyond. I think you can't help but be excited with where technology is taking things with marketing. I think again, going back to the personalization bit, that's the stuff. I know I'm obviously very cynical, but that's the stuff I get excited about, the personalization. Um, there's quite with technology, there's obviously a little bit of a like mix of emotions, isn't there? Because we are excited about the capabilities, but we're scared. We're scared of the investment. We're scared about what it means for our strategies, and like the way we have been doing things needs to change. I think, but I think it's really exciting. And I think you can't help but be like, even I, a very skeptical person, can't help but be swept up in some of that. What about you?
I agree with the collaboration piece. I think we're really lucky in our like ecosystem of HubSpot, where like partners really get on with each other. If you are in the HubSpot ecosystem, you just tend to really bond with each other and like respect each other. So, that's something I really like. But also the technology, I think I'm excited most for how we can use unstructured data with AI. And I'm really excited to use it for things like market research and things like putting
Mm,
call recordings with our customers of a certain buyer persona, and then using that to ask them questions in this AI model to see what they would think, and using all of that
yeah,
unstructured data to inform things that would be quite difficult to find out. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to most. But and I'm also a little bit scared with how quickly things are changing and how quickly things what once worked didn't work. And I think
yeah,
it's that cycle is happening quicker now than it used.
yeah.
which is a bit scary, but also exciting. You get to try lots of new things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Right, so that was all of the questions about the report. I'll make sure for anybody who's been listening, I'm going to put the link to the report in the comments so you can go and have a read. But hopefully this has been helpful to decode some of those statistics and what they mean in our opinion as a marketing, a HubSpot partner agency on that as well. So thank you, Holly, for all of your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.